Think you know Amazon? Think again. Did you know you can get a seasonal warehouse job offer today? You don't even need to interview. That means you can make extra cash before the holidays. You can even pick your own payday. And seasonal jobs can lead to full-time, regular employment. You'll be amazed by what you can get as an Amazon warehouse associate. To learn more about all the benefits of working a seasonal job at Amazon, go to amazon.com/hourly. Amazon is proud to be an equal opportunity employer.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Advanced Sports Analytics Show presented by RotoGrinders. I'm your host, Travis Mangone, here back with the one, the only, Brandon Adams, but also we have a guest, Stewart Gibson. We'll kick it off with Stewart first. Stewart, how's it going over there, the new guy?
Hey, what's up, man? Doing good. Looking forward to week 2. Enjoying the show. You guys did a great job last week, and excited to be a part of it this week.
Yep, happy to have you there, and happy to have you back, Brandon, to talk some more sports. We'll go to Brandon Adams. How's it going over there, man? Happy to have you back for another week talking some NFL action.
Yeah, love it. I'm ready for week 2.
Now, real quick, how about you introduce our guest, Stewart? Because I got to meet him, do a little Skype call, find out all of the cool things he's doing over there at Advanced Sports Analytics. Give me some of the details on Stewart, or you can have Stewart say some stuff if you want.
Stewart has been one of the greatest collaborators that I've ever known. He came to me through a friend, a Harvard undergrad who is a close friend of mine. And my Harvard undergrad friend said, Stewart's an exceptional talent. I don't really have something for him to do. You should meet him. I met him and realized he was really deep into sports analytics. And I was running the Advanced Sports Analytics site. I suggested maybe he could work part-time on that. And we've been doing that together for
I think it's 3 years.
About 3 years.
It's been a long time. Or it feels like a long time for me. I'm happy to be on the show. And been good work we've done with ASA. And really excited with what we've done to date. And even more excited for what we're going to do moving forward. So,
Yes, I'm really excited for the show. Excited to be talking some week 1 action or week 2 action with you guys. But first, we are going to talk some week 1 stuff. We'll kick it off with you first, Stewart. How's that sound? We're going to do some week 1 review. So what are some of the takeaways from week 1?
Yeah, I mean, I was going back and just kind of looking at what I did week 1, I think it's important to just evaluate like what I did well, what I didn't do well. And I don't know, try to continue what I am doing well and learn from what I didn't do well. And I think week 1 was like a really important running back week. There were a lot of good values in play. And I don't know. I mean, I think running back's like a position where I'm always trying to focus on volume. I mean, find the guys who are going to give me as many touch opportunities per dollar. But I mean, I think there were a number of guys you could have gone with in week 1 along those lines. And for me, I was really diligent about separating between the efficiency of running backs. I mean, I think there was a slot of about like 6 running backs or so between, Eckler and Carson and Fournette, Dalvin Cook. I really liked Mark Ingram coming in and Chubb as well. And I don't know, I've kind of found myself off like Chubb and Fournette on account of just their efficiency, like low efficiency. And I mean, I think that played out well. So I don't know if that's just like grasping onto a single kind of week and trying to run with that or not. But I don't know. I definitely like moving forward want to not overlook per touch efficiency when looking at the running back position, and kind of trying to find that balance of like guys who do have good volume, but also not losing the sight of how efficient running backs are. I mean, I think Fournette coming into the week just showed as a guy who just wasn't very efficient per touch, and like maybe you could expect that efficiency to go up with an expanded role in the pass game. But I don't know, I just like wasn't seeing it, and I guess fortunately was off Fournette and Cash. But I do kind of want to continue to strive for not just going with the guys who are going to get the most touches, but also look for that right mix of like volume and efficiency. And yeah, I found our tools very useful in doing that, trying to look at running back efficiency.
Yeah, it was one of those weeks where a lot of people were playing the elite running, or not the elite running backs, but the mid-tier running backs, I guess you could say. But they were still elite value, right? That's kind of where I was going with that. So, yeah, they were elite value plays. A lot of people played those 6K running backs. And Christian McCaffrey, I think on any other week would have had a lot higher ownership, and he absolutely smashed. Still had some pretty decent ownership, though. Brandon, what did you kind of think of the week one review? Are some of those running backs in that 6K range like that got priced up? Are we still going to go to them? Are they still too cheap? What do you think of the week one review of how the first week went?
Well, I thought week one was fairly interesting. It was quite chalky. Cash was a real equity grind down. The best teams tended to win. Tournaments were very interesting. I mean, in tournaments, you always have a trade-off between equity, picking the players that have the best projected fantasy points per dollar, and differentiation, trying to pick players with low ownership. Generally speaking, when you have a tournament that's super top heavy, like perhaps the Millionaire Maker, you want to emphasize differentiation because maybe 1/3 of the prize pool is going to first place. It's very important to have a unique lineup. Whereas in a tournament like the Wildcat, where there's a strong first prize, but there's also a lot for down the ladder, you can emphasize equity a little bit more. And I found it to be a very interesting week where in the Millionaire Maker, your top 100 lineups tended to be very unique lineups, very strange lineups. But then most of the lineups just below that tended to be quite close to the cash lineup. So in the Wildcat, you would have done well by just playing small deviations from the cash lineup. Most of your lineups would have cashed because it was the type of week where maybe the top 10 lineups in the Wildcat were quite strange, but then just behind that, you had something close to your cash lineups.
Yeah, it totally felt like that type of week. So it was definitely really interesting. Is there any like takeaways that you have from like the week watching stuff? Like, are you a believer in John Ross now? What other takeaways from watching the games or anything else DFS related, Stewart, did you say?
Honestly, I wasn't getting to watch too many of the games. I was on a flight from Tennessee back to New York. Found myself watching some of the Cleveland-Tennessee game at the airport. But, yeah, I don't know. Didn't get to watch too much of the Sunday games. Did tune in for the Monday games. So, I don't know. I'm not sure they're going to be much help in terms of Sunday game takeaways from like a viewership standpoint.
What about you, Brandon? What else do you have? Any other kind of takeaways from week one?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in the eyeball test, but this particular Sunday I had multiple conflicts. My brother's birthday celebration and a couple other things. So yeah, I'm a huge believer in the eyeball test, but it we'll have to wait for week 2 and onwards.
We are a data-driven DFS outfit, so perhaps our not watching the games maybe aligns with kind of our credo, looking at the numbers and not but no, I'm kidding. I do think watching the games, I think makes a lot of sense, but it's kind of funny that neither of us were tuned into the games.
I felt like I sort of watched the games because I've listened to Pete and all of these guys talk about them quite a lot. So I have my views secondhand.
Yeah, I watched what I could. I was at the DraftKings kickoff bash, and my friends picked the worst seat you could find, and we could only watch Eagles Jets for the first game. So that's all I got to watch. I couldn't watch Red Zone. It was so infuriating being there watching just 2 games and not being able to watch Red Zone. I was looking at stuff on my phone. But in the for the second games, I moved my seat and I got to watch the more of the Red Zone and get to see what happened. So got to get a better look at those games. And man, the Chris Carson usage was crazy. That's a guy that I'm just going to be riding that price until it goes all the way up. So let's dive into some other things. Let's talk about some new coaching staffs. And Stewart, talk about what you saw with the new coaching staffs. What are some things that you noticed?
So yeah, I think there are a number of interesting new coaching staffs around the league, and I was pretty interested to see, how they would perform in regular season. Our models do attempt to project week one usage and kind of tendencies for these new coaches based on what they do in the preseason. But yeah, I mean, I think that's always tough to do, and sometimes you don't know what coaches do in the preseason might not dictate what they do in the regular season. But yeah, I got some notes on like a couple coaching staffs I was really paying attention to. I think most notably like Cliff Kingsbury and what he's going to do in Arizona, I think is really top of mind for people. I don't know. I came in a bit of a skeptic on, his claims of just running this Texas Tech like spread offense where they're just going to be go, go, go. But I don't know, to be honest, I feel like he kind of delivered. I mean, the Cardinals ran 443 air yards in regulations, and discounting any extra air yards they got in overtime. That puts him. I mean, that's in rarefied air. I mean, guys like Mangone, who we're just praising as air yards beasts, are in the high threes. So I mean, to see Cliff Kingsbury and his offense put up that much passing volume and kind of downfield volume, I don't know. I mean, some people kind of saw coming. I was a little surprised by. We saw the Dolphins coaching staff run very air yards heavy offense. I don't know that we can really trust that much, just given the way that game was going. I mean, so early in the game, they got forced into a pass heavy and deep pass heavy offense. So I don't know. We'll kind of see what comes out of that, but I'm not like too eager to take up what we saw with Miami's coaching staff as gospel. One offense that really stood out to me was the new coaching staff in Cincinnati. Didn't really know exactly what we were going to get from Zach Taylor, who's done some offensive coordinator work, and new OC Brian Callahan, but they put up 381 air yards, a very respectable and kind of high total. So they're looking like a team that really may moving forward. And we saw Andy Dalton crushed, and as you mentioned, John Ross crushed as well. Yeah, it's a team to keep an eye on. I mean, I think that game was more reasonable than Arizona or Miami, and maybe we can be more trusting in what we're seeing there. New OCs that tended to be very run heavy, and I think kind of in line with what their head coaches were saying they're going to do. Minnesota, I mean, 77% of their plays they were running, just absolutely insane. And I don't know. I definitely think for me, it puts a damper on expectations for guys like Thielen or Diggs. And then Tennessee, they brought in Arthur Smith as their new OC. Mike Vrabel, been a very run-heavy coach in his early stages at Tennessee. That continued with Smith, who was running the ball 44% of the time. Granted, they were ahead. And yeah, running low ADOT, just over 5 yards per target. These are offenses that I think, to me, I trust moving forward will kind of be what we saw in week one. Short passes, lots of runs. Could be good opportunity for Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry. Might tamper some expectations for Thielen, Diggs, guys like Corey Davis, etc.
Brandon, how about you? We saw, the Minnesota Vikings, kind of like Stewart said, I mean, they told us they were going to run the ball, and Mike Zimmer said, we're going to pound the rock, right? Like, he's all about it. I don't know if you caught that, but that was absolutely crazy. That was one of my big takeaways for sure. I don't know how excited we can get about the passing attack from Minnesota, but what are some takeaways that you saw, Brandon?
Yeah, so one thing I think is very notable about week 2 is that we've talked about Miami being high on the pass and Arizona being high on the pass. These are teams that are very penalized by the betting market. For week 2, we have a spread of 13, plus 13 for Arizona against Baltimore, and plus 18.5 for Miami at home. I mean, these are sort of insane spreads. New England, amazing team, doesn't travel that well. Miami beat them last year. Miami at home, 18.5, a true outlier. I mean, we know what happened last week, but that is a very high number, and 13 against Baltimore is a high number. So, I don't know. We had a discussion last week, Travis, where you were all about the 3 running back builds, and I was making the case for the 4 wide receiver builds. And running back carried the day yet again for week 1. maybe there has been a true change in the NFL, and these betting markets are saying, well, you want to pass a lot? We don't think that's going to work. So I don't know. I'm curious. I'm taking a little bit of a wait and see approach there.
Yeah, no, I think the one thing you brought up though last week that definitely hit was like these, wide receiver ones that absolutely pop. And like Sammy Watkins, I mean, he wasn't a wide receiver one there. He ended up being a two, but he turned into the one throughout the game. I guess maybe he did that a little before the Tyreek Hill injury. I forget when the injury happened, but we just saw like these receivers just pop off for the big games, like those ceiling games that you really don't see as much. And like a guy like Sammy Watkins getting a 50 fantasy point per game, that's absolutely crazy to see from a guy like Sammy Watkins, right? It's not shocking to see Christian McCaffrey do it or like a Julio Jones, but for a Sammy Watkins, it's just crazy. But he is in that amazing offense in Kansas City where they get tons and tons of points. So
sure. And the difference between a wide receiver and a running back for the most part is that they can break off high teens on a play. And that was a lot of the discussion last week. This week, I think McCaffrey will be chalky, and at his price, he's a terrible tournament play. He's a terrible big field tournament.
Being a parent can be really challenging. Child and Family Resource Network focuses on connecting pregnant parents and those with kids under the age of 5 with free support services to help them on their parenting journey. Everyone deserves someone they can turn to for help with parenting. Visit childandfamilyresourcenetwork.org today.
He's playing right now against Tampa Bay, so he'll be off the main slate.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yes, if you're playing the Thursday Monday, but if you're listening to this and playing the Thursday Monday, I mean, he already locked in. Who knows what's going to happen? I got him on Showdown, so Brandon, I hope he's not a terrible play. I hope he is the best play in the game.
Are we not doing like Thursday through Mondays anymore? Is it all gone Showdown? I haven't paid attention to the Thursday slate.
I haven't entered the Thursday Mondays, but the action is not as good. I'm going to enter next week, so I will report back to you next week. I forgot to enter; it was too late, and I realized today I did not do it. But I will definitely be getting back into that. So gotta wait.
It's worth noting that at Advanced Sports Analytics, we have two types of distributions that we keep on an ongoing basis. One is the distribution for each player of just fantasy points, and another is fantasy points per salary dollar. And the distribution of fantasy point performances is more condensed for running backs in general. There's a lot more volatility for wide receivers. And the distribution of fantasy points per dollar is likewise more spread out for wide receivers, more condensed for running backs. So what tends to happen is when you have a wide receiver like McCaffrey who's priced super high, they don't have access to the kind of fantasy point per dollar performances that you need to win the very big field tournaments. I mean, it did happen last week, but this week, even the difference of $800 in salary, the plus $800, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it is a lot in terms of your access to the crazy high fantasy points per dollar.
All right, Stewart, do you have anything else to talk about with the new coaching staff changes? Anything else that you haven't touched on that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I also got a note on Kellen Moore. We saw a very balanced approach from Kellen Moore, and I can pull up kind of our historic metrics on, offensive coordinators. What do you see Kellen Moore, though, doing a very balanced approach, about 50-50 split between run and pass. I mean, it was a pretty lopsided game, but in the places that he was passing, I mean, he was pushing it downfield. That 9.4 ADOT ranks pretty high among, active OCs that we're looking at. And, I do think if we can find opportunities to play Dallas in more neutral game environments where maybe Dallas might be less likely to abandon that pass early, I think that's a really interesting opportunity. A lot of buzz about Kellen Moore and kind of what that's going to do for Dak Prescott, and added, options like Randall Cobb and the improvement of Michael Gallup. Very interested to see kind of what that offense is going to do moving forward. And, they got Washington this week, expected to be a lopsided game, but definitely looking to capitalize on that Dallas offense and, the downfield mindset that Kellen Moore brings when we can find them in more neutral game environments. Definitely.
Yeah, Dallas, they looked really good. Again, it's one game, right? You don't want to overreact. Like, of course, the Patriots look good and they absolutely dominate, but we don't want to overreact to too many things. Anything else, Brandon, you want to touch on, or you want to talk about our next segment?
Yeah, let's move on to the next segment. Just wanted to note real quick that we did notice the Arizona pass-heavy offense. Christian Kirk is a great tournament play. He has the kind of distribution that can win tournaments, and the playing from behind pass-heavy offense will really suit him this week.
Alrighty, let's go on to reality or mirage. And Stewart, this is a good segment here. I like to we get to talk about all of the plays that are they real plays or are they just fake plays? You know what I mean? Like, can we believe it? So Stewart, how about you kick us off? Who are some of the reality and mirage plays that you saw this week that we need to discuss about?
I mean, I'm hesitant to make heavy commitments one way or the other, but I mean, I think the guy we ultimately have to start this conversation with is Lamar Jackson. I mean, we saw him pop off in a huge way on Sunday, and year two quarterback, I think there's a lot of uncertainty as far as how big of a step forward he'll be taking, if he'll be taking a step forward at all. I mean, some things that I'm looking at with Jackson are just his efficiency metrics. So, I mean, his passing efficiency, fantasy points per dropback on Sunday were insane. And I mean, whatever step forward he's potentially taken, I just don't see how that's sustainable for him. I think once our tool loads up, I mean, the fantasy points per dropback that he showed on Sunday were like 3x, I think, anything we've seen from him in previous weeks. And I mean, I don't know, whatever step forward he's taking, I just can't see how that's going to be a sustainable I'm sorry, this is our QB dropback app. I just don't see how that type of efficiency is going to be sustainable for him. So I can pull up kind of the graphic here, just showing, let's see, let me pull this out of the way. I can't see him really maintaining the efficiency level that he displayed. I mean, so we're looking at here's where he did Sunday, just an insane level of efficiency per dropback compared to what we've seen in previous weeks. I just can't see him pulling that off. However, also, in the past has shown a really high propensity to scramble and, produce points with his legs, which he didn't show at all on Sunday. He didn't take a single scramble. He also, I think, had like 3% of Baltimore's design run plays. I mean, I expected those numbers to go up. So I don't know. I mean, I think Lamar Jackson's for real. I think moving forward, he is just going to be producing fantasy points in a little different way than we've been seeing in the past, or than we saw on Sunday. I'm expecting him to kind of produce more with his legs, produce more with his legs than he did on Sunday, produce a little less with his arm than he did on Sunday. Ultimately, I think that'll be a very productive quarterback. He also had like just a great matchup versus Miami where they were just futile in their defense against him. That's not going to happen every week, although he does draw a great matchup against Arizona this week. So, I mean, I think he's a legit play this week. Moving forward, I might, though, temper my expectations for him a little bit.
Brandon, what about you? I mean, listen, I know that the Ravens are not going to average 59 points per game throughout the rest of the season. There is going to be some regression here, but Lamar Jackson, what do you think of him, reality or mirage?
Well, it's interesting because we know that his pass efficiency per dropback is not going to be anything like week one. It will never approach that. But he is always a guy who has the right tournament profile for us because as we know, quarterbacks that can rush and possibly rush for TDs or even 2 TDs in a game, those are great tournament plays. So I think we have to wait on him until his price and ownership come down, as I'm sure they will later in the season, but he's the type of player that we want in tournament lineups.
All righty. Let's go on to the next one, Stewart. I think you had written up McCaffrey. And again, McCaffrey's playing on the Thursday slate, but I think it's worth talking about because he had an insane volume here of 52% of the touches. So, Stewart, is that a reality or mirage? What can we expect from him?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we saw from McCaffrey on Sunday isn't unreasonable to expect moving forward. I mean, we've seen him hit these, 50%, rushing attempt or 50% market share of rushes in the past. And I mean, he's such a dynamic receiver that yeah, I mean, it's not unreasonable to expect him to hit 50% of just touch attempts. So either rush attempt or target market share. I mean, he's done this in the past. And, we saw Devin Funchess depart from Carolina. And to be honest, he absorbed a decent amount of, volume market share. And honestly, I mean, we see this negative correlation between Funchess and McCaffrey, games where Funchess had a lot of volume, week 7, 2018, for example, McCaffrey suffered, and in games where McCaffrey is really popping off on volume, the lack of volume attributed to Funchess seemed to correlate with that. So, I mean, with Funchess gone, I know last week you guys talked about how we could maybe expect that to get redistributed among some of the receivers, but yeah, and I thought the same thing. I kind of totally missed the idea that Carolina would just reload that volume back onto their best player in McCaffrey. So yeah, I don't think it's crazy to expect. I mean, 50%, we don't see him hit that often, where you can just lock McCaffrey in for 50% of Carolina touches, but it's going to happen. And yeah, I mean, I think for the right price, he makes a ton of sense in cash games and should always be a tournament consideration, just given how much volume we can project him to get.
What about you, Brandon? What's your thoughts on Christian McCaffrey? Are you going to be, is it reality mirage? What do you think of the situation going on there?
Well, one wonders if maybe Cam falling off from his peak is associated with McCaffrey sort of really hitting his stride. I mean, maybe it's like Cam's safety valve. I don't know. For me, it's been a surprising performance from McCaffrey, and I've tended to avoid him both in cash and tournaments. For tournaments, it's, again, the upside versus the salary. The salary got to high levels pretty quickly, and I'm quite surprised when he hits numbers like he did last week. For cash, I mean, in retrospect, you wish you did it last week, but I wouldn't have considered it, and I've rarely played him in cash. It's always advisable to play high-priced running backs when they're feasible in cash because their distributions are tighter. And because the site has the problem that they're pricing cash games and huge tournaments at the same time, they tend to price running backs in a way where they have higher projected fantasy points per dollar. So the tighter distribution plus the higher projected fantasy points per dollar make you want to spend up at running back in general. Last week we didn't do it because there was some clear chalk around the 6K price point, but I don't see myself playing much McCaffrey in either cash or tournaments this year.
Alrighty, let's go on to the next one, and it's Derrick Henry. Listen, I'm not the biggest Titans fan. I thought this offense would absolutely stink. I also thought the Browns would come out swinging and be awesome, but they were not so good. A little bit of a reality check week one that, there are teams in the league, they get paid too to play football. So what do you think of Derrick Henry and this Titans offense, Stewart? Because there's not a lot of weapons there, and if there's not a lot of weapons, maybe Derrick Henry just becomes, a wrecking ball if they run down the field a ton.
Yeah, I mean, the more and more I've looked, it might be muted. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the more and more I've looked at it, I mean, I don't know, maybe I just ran into some luck with Derrick Henry. And I also was very high in Cleveland. I had a lot of kind of Baker Odell, Baker Higgins, Baker Njoku in tournaments. But I don't know. I mean, Derrick Henry, starting kind of midway through last year, has been this guy who's just shown the ability to have very efficient games where, I don't even know that it's so much on a play-by-play efficiency, but he's just got this big play ability. In hindsight, I don't necessarily know that Cleveland was the right spot to be deploying Henry. I think it kind of worked out and he had a very efficient game, but I don't know. I honestly didn't see kind of the way that game went coming, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think in the right spot, he's not a cash game play, and his price is quite high. I mean, 6,000 this week for Henry is getting up there for so many, I think, better options from a volume and efficiency standpoint. But in cash plays, I mean, in tournament games rather, I mean, you find the right spot for Henry, and he has I mean, shown like early last year, just efficiency was so low. I mean, half a fantasy point per touch attempt, but towards the middle of last year and towards the end, I mean, the guy has just been able to rip off some big plays. And I don't know if we're, just benefiting from a small sample size there, but he's definitely a guy I want to keep in mind. And yeah, I don't know. I perhaps a mirage. I think coming out of week one was trying to talk myself into Derrick Henry efficiency monster. And the more and more I've thought about it, like perhaps a mirage, but I don't know. I mean, the upside is there from a tournament standpoint. I don't think like he should be X'd out completely, but it's kind of my Derrick Henry take.
All right, what about you, Brandon? I mean, Derrick Henry, listen, it's hard to sell me on Derrick Henry. I'm not the biggest Derrick Henry believer, but he's this offense. Like, there's not a lot there in that offense in general. So, Brandon, give me the scoop on Derrick Henry. Are you believing it?
Well, I have him pegged as the type of guy that you might want to lock in your multi-entry for FanDuel.
Yes, I knew you'd like that because he's a tournament guy. He is such a tournament play. No one stomps his stomach.
Well, he's your FanDuel tournament guy. Yes. I mean, we talked about how I like to do my lineups by hand, and there's something that happens between the price point of $20 and $9, where for $20 I'll do the lineup by hand. For $9 I'll mass multi-entry, and also the competition is so weak on those FanDuel tournaments that even though chalk is widely owned, it can be advisable to play chalk anyway. So yeah, FanDuel, just lock Derrick Henry in for one of your RB slots and just play optimals after that. I think it might work out. FanDuel, I, as all our viewers know, FanDuel is half point PPR, so it suits players like Derrick Henry who you hope to get 2 TDs.
Yeah, that makes it a little bit easier. Listen, let's go to the next one because, and these are all the air yards monsters, right? We got Deshaun Jackson in that revenge game. We got John Brown paired with Josh Allen, just airing the ball out a ton. I mean, these are some home run hitters, and these are guys that help you win tournaments. They help you take everything down. So, Stewart, are we buying these guys? Because like Deshaun Jackson, when he was with the Bucs, I mean, he increased the air yards of Jameis Winston and Fitzmagic, and I'm assuming Deshaun Jackson, when he's with Wentz, he's going to increase his air yards as well and increase the opportunity for that stack to just hit.
So yeah, I got one buy and one sell between Brown and Jackson, and Jackson's going to be my sell. I mean, to me, I just like he was an air yards beast with Tampa Bay last year, and like I mean that don't get me wrong, Tampa Bay had a very strong receiving core last year, but he's entering, this Philly offense that's just got like a ton of weapons. I mean, if we just look at our, mean air yards over the last season plus week one, like there's just a lot of mouths to feed between Ertz and Jeffrey. I mean, these guys are guys who command a lot of air yards and are going to command a lot of targets. And I don't know, I just like, I have a hard time seeing Jackson just being like that de facto guy. I think, and like he did with Tampa Bay, I think he's going to have weeks where he pops off in an air yards context. But I just think there's so many mouths to feed where there's these other guys, Ertz, there's going to be games where they're feeding him, half of their air yards. Jeffrey is a guy who's just going to command a lot of targets and downfield targets. I have a hard time just seeing Jackson on a consistent basis being this guy that, is going to be getting all of Philadelphia's downfield looks. And, coming off a big week where I'm sure there might be a little more ownership on him, I think this is an opportunity, and his price is up. Like, this is an opportunity where I might fade him. But like, as he's wont to do, I think there will be, games where he gets overshadowed by Ertz, Jeffrey. And then, that might be a good opportunity to run Jackson back. I think he's just going to be very up and down, but I'm saying mostly mirage here, at least from a kind of cash and consistency standpoint. John Brown, on the other hand, I was very high on John Brown coming into the season, and I think he, really just solidified what I was expecting him to be for this Buffalo offense. The guy is just lives downfield. Robert Foster's in here, but he's been kind of phased out by what John Brown has provided. And John Brown is just living downfield. And I don't know, is there a quarterback with Buffalo who wants to push the ball downfield? If so, like, why can't we expect this to be a play that we can rely on? Additionally, I mean, just Buffalo in general has between McDermott and Brian Dabble, a very kind of air yards happy offense. They are, ranking near the top leading into this week in terms of how many, air yards we're expecting them to throw, and how many pass plays we're expecting them to throw. Here they are right here on our at the moment kind of projections for Sunday. They're expected to kind of throw the 6th most air yards behind lesser offenses like Miami, Arizona. I think John Brown's going to be a beast for Buffalo this year, and I'm sure we'll get to week 2 quarterbacks in a second, but I mean, I think the John Brown, Josh Allen combo has a lot of upside moving forward. So
I think it has a lot of upside this week, Stewart. Like, this is a great week to run it out there. I think it's a good idea. Brandon, do you have anything to touch on those two guys, Jackson and Brown, or you want to just dive into the positional breakdown?
On Brown, I think we found the advanced sports analytics perfect play. He fits the coaching tendencies of Arizona towards the run. He's the type of player that has big air yards, a perfect tournament distribution. Not a cash guy historically, and I probably wouldn't go there this week, but tournaments, he's your perfect play. He has the breakout games. And he's a perfect pairing with Josh Allen, who we also like this week. And then, as I noted, we wouldn't have necessarily expected Buffalo to be a 13-point favorite over Arizona. That might be a couple points more than expected. That suggests maybe Vegas thinks that this offense is better than consensus, or better than general public might think. So maybe it's a big performance coming for Brown and Allen. I'll be there.
Also, just one last kind of stat to chime in with. I mean, sometimes you do see these big performances against a bad defense where you're like, might be kind of fool's gold. I mean, no defensive coordinator has been better at limiting air yards than the New York Jets, Greg Williams. So, I mean, to see Brown just have such an air yard happy performance against a defense that in general is able to limit those type of downfield attempts, I mean, is quite shocking. And I mean, I don't see why John Brown can't light it up this week against a Giants team that just got absolutely destroyed by Dallas and kind of their downfield threat this week. So
Yeah, definitely think that Allen, run the Josh Allen with the John Brown, maybe pair it with an Evan Ingram, pair it with a Saquon Barkley. I think that's a great way to go this week. Let's dive into the positional breakdown, though. And Brandon, talk about quarterbacks to me, because listen, I'm not in love with quarterback. My first guy that kind of jumped out to me was Josh Allen, which is a perfect segue here. He's probably my favorite guy in this range. Like, I just think he's too cheap, but if I have the money, I don't mind going up to a Tom Brady, who I was kind of poo-pooing on an earlier pod, but like, they're just going to put up so many points to New England, and just realized that was a bad take. So, I think Josh Allen is definitely the guy, but Tom Brady's certainly in play, and I haven't played Tom Brady since like many years ago, it feels like. But what about you, Brandon? How are you approaching the quarterback position this week?
So one thing that has happened that is worth noting is that over the past 3 or 4 years, DraftKings has condensed their quarterback pricing. There used to be more spread between the top tier and the low tier. So you should kind of tend towards top tier more than was previously the case. And that's especially true on weeks where you have some cheap chalk, which are arguably we do have this week. So I think you should tend towards paying up for the premium tier 1 QBs. QBs, it is true that there are a lot of QBs that are in contention for top 3 performances, but the top tier are much less likely to ruin your lineups. And I think with the salaries being as they are this week, you should err towards the clear best plays. So you should stick with a lot of Mahomes. I think the price differential is perfectly reasonable, and it's extremely unlikely that he disappoints you. Brady is a good play as well. I prefer him for smaller field things and Mahomes for bigger fields. Lamar Jackson is a reasonable play. Dak is a great play. And Josh Allen is a strong play if you need a little bit of savings. So that's kind of where I am. I will take some chances on Goff and as well, and perhaps Carr. But yeah, I think don't get too fancy at quarterback. It would be reasonable if Mahomes was high owned and you played him anyway.
All right, Stewart, let's head to you. Quarterback position. How are you approaching it? Because it's not my favorite week for quarterbacks this week.
Yeah, I mean, I was right there with you guys with Brady. Like, that's a quarterback's position that I think correlates well with just how many points we can expect the team to score. And like, obviously the Patriots are going to be expected to put up monster numbers. I think we have them as like 22% probability to be the top team score on the slate in terms of real points. And I mean, I know that sounds like low, like 1 in 5 chance, but I mean, that's very, very high. I think they're like two times as probable to be the top team on the slate compared to the next best team, which is Kansas City. I mean, I don't know. Am I crazy to think that there is some risk of, Belichick just like pulling Brady? We do know that's a team that, when given the opportunity, can become run heavy. I don't know. I've kind of been finding myself talking myself away from Brady. But yeah, Jackson was a guy that I think up until this morning was like, there's no way I'm playing anyone but Lamar Jackson in cash. Just like the perfect matchup against Arizona, if you can have a more perfect matchup than Miami last week. But yeah, I have actually been finding myself creeping towards Josh Allen. I mean, when you look at Allen versus Jackson, their metrics are like extremely similar, just in terms of per dropback fantasy efficiency, their tendency to run the ball, especially in the red zone, both on a designed run play or via scramble. I guess where Jackson like differentiates himself is the expected pace we can, the pace we can expect him to play at going up against Arizona. But I don't know. I mean, for over 1,000 less, I'm finding it difficult to stay away from Josh Allen. I don't know. I mean, you said, lower price quarterbacks like have a risk of ruining your lineup. I mean, Josh Allen has a risk of ruining, Sunday if you're a Bills fan. If you're a fantasy owner, though, I don't know. I mean, the guy just plays bad real football, but really good fantasy football in terms of just his ability to push the ball downfield, take off and run. Yeah, I'm intrigued by Josh Allen. Some tournament plays. I don't know. I might be tempted, probably mistakenly, to look for some cheap plays. I mean, is Gardner Minshew like completely out of the realm of possibility at his price, or am I just like trying to get too cute with just going all the way down to?
I think that's a good tournament play for sure.
I mean, the thing about Gardner Minshew is he's going to help you get in guys. If it helps you jam in players, that's fine. I mean, you can listen. If you're probably gonna have to pair him up with someone, right? Though you want to pair him with like D.D. Westbrook, who obviously has like getting a ton of volume. So maybe do like the Gardner Minshew, pair him up with Fournette, and pair him up with D.D. So that's a route that you can obviously go to as well. Anything else like quarterback, Brandon? Or you want to head on over to the running backs?
Yeah, that's about it. I mean, I would say keep it simple and try to get top tier quarterbacks. Of course, if you're playing a 300,000 person tournament, you can take some chances with guys that have flashed upside historically, like a Stafford or a Breeze, but I won't be doing much of that.
Yep. All right, let's go over to running backs. And at the top, we got Barkley against Buffalo, but do you pay $9,200? That's expensive. I kind of like going down to Kamara at $8,200 in that Rams-Saints game, which is going to have a ton of scoring, I'm sure. It's the highest total of the week, so got to load up on that game. Love Kamara in that spot. Then we got at $7,200, we got Dalvin Cook, who, we saw how much usage he got, absolute usage monster. Brandon, we'll kick it back to you. What are you doing at the top with running back? Because Barkley's a guy I don't expect that you're paying for.
In cash this week, it might be a week to pay up for running back. I haven't been deep enough in there. He's the type of guy I might consider paying up for it. In cash, of course, it's a totally different animal where you're looking for tight distributions, high projected fantasy points per dollar, and much unlike tournaments, negative correlation is desirable. So it can be quite reasonable to pair up Josh Allen, John Brown, and Saquon Barkley, whereas that would be suicide in a tournament. So I haven't been deep enough into construction, but if we come upon Josh Allen as our best cash game tournament play and John Brown is in contention, then it can be quite reasonable to play Barkley with Brown and Allen. So yeah, I don't dismiss it out of hand. We have plenty of mid-price guys that are great plays: Jacobs, Eckler, White, Connor, Aaron Jones. There's plenty of value, and it might be the type of week we have to wait close to lock to determine exactly how much value we have at spots like tight ends. What can we fit and what can't we fit?
Yeah, because there is value throughout the industry, like a cheap running back that could be in plays. If Le'Veon Bell is out, we don't know. But, a Ty Montgomery could pop up as a guy that's just going to get so much run and stuff. Stuart, how are you paying at the top? And then if you could dive into like the 6K range, because in that 6K range, I mean, Carson is really interesting. Fournette's not a bad play. Eckler with, the tight end situation, no Hunter Henry is going to help Eckler a ton. And those receivers are banged up over there. We talked about Derrick Henry before. Marlon Mack got a ton more runs. So the 6K range is interesting too. So talk about the top and then just dive into the 6K range after.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you, Travis, on Kamara. Saquon makes sense if you're going to try to do a game stack against Buffalo. But, yeah, I mean, the price is quite rich on Saquon. And Kamara looked, very good against Houston. And, I think is in line to draw another good matchup where, if I'm paying up, it's going to be Kamara. And that's where, for me, kind of the going, not to go too far back to quarterback, but to me, that's the crux is do you pay up to get a premium quarterback and just completely avoid kind of that high tier running back, or do you pay down a quarterback so you can squeeze in a guy like Kamara? We'll see how it goes. 6 again, kind of, has become interesting to me. I was thinking I'd be off Eckler, price is getting too high, but now all of a sudden Hunter Henry's out and, Los Angeles is dinged up in the receiving core. And that's a guy like Eckler. I think touched on it last week. His per touch efficiency is just insane. And, with no Melvin Gordon, I think it's hard. Let's see. Yeah. Hold on. I got to pull up the per touch numbers, but I think he's somewhere around 1.2 or to 1.4, I think per touch attempt. The guy is going to be, if given the volume, in such a smash spot, given the injuries there. We were high on Mark Ingram last week, and I'm inclined to run Mark Ingram back. Baltimore at the moment projects as our second highest run play total of the teams on the slate, and we do have Washington on top. I'm not really sure how I see that working out. The algorithm must be liking them for some reason, but Baltimore, such a good spot, to be ahead and be running the ball. And Ingram was incredible last week, given the blowout. If Arizona can keep it closer, but still play at that fast pace and from behind, I just don't see how Ingram in kind of this lead back role that he's in can't put up a lot of points. And the guy's efficient. I don't know. I feel like Ingram gets this rap as being not that good or something. But his per touch efficiency is really strong. Almost a DraftKings point per touch attempt, be a handoff or target. I like Ingram again. And I don't know. I'm also intrigued by some of the lower guys. There's some injuries that are opening up some plays in Washington. I don't know. I just can't see myself playing Adrian Peterson, but I do think for tournaments, Chris Thompson makes sense if Dallas gets ahead early and Washington has to revert to pass. Gio Bernard, pretty efficient guy, both on the ground and in the air like that if Mixon's out. And Breda as well, kind of a dual threat running back. And then there's also Josh Jacobs, who I think will be a very chalky play, but is one of these guys who benefits from the Monday game where the prices come out before we see his week 1 performance, and he looked good on Monday. And, seems like maybe the most talented kind of offensive weapon in that Oakland offense. And at 4.7, I mean, he's just massively underpriced. So I do think that's a strong play there as well.
Yeah, Brandon, Matt Breida is a guy I like at 5,200 with Coleman being out. I think he's a really good play that Stewart brought up as well. Who are some of the cheaper running backs that you're looking at, Brandon?
So I think this is a week where we're really going to have to wait, like right down to it.
100% right, Brandon.
I'm going to be sorting the cheaper running backs really Sunday morning for the most part. And as we know, it gets quite hard to play the cheaper running backs in either cash or tournaments when you have strong chalk at 4,700 like Jacobs, at 6,000, at 5,000, because they tend not to project well enough. I mean, they tend to have even at their best projection, about the same number of touches as the 6K guys we like or the 5K guys we like, and less efficiency. So I'm not sure it's a week we're going to go there, although the low guys are definitely worth considering for tournaments.
All righty. Anything else at running back, Stewart? Or you want to head on over to the receiver position?
Yeah, I got nothing else at RB.
All righty. Yeah, I think you hit it pretty well, Brandon. We got to wait and see with a lot of the running back stuff and how the week's going to develop. But a lot of good plays in there that we mentioned and brought up. Let's head over to receiver. And, I'm thinking of a guy that benefited from the Monday pricing, and I know he's a cheap guy. It's Tyrell Williams, the Gazelle. I think he's going to be a guy that is going to be a really chalky option. But at the top, there's a lot of different ways you can go. And again, we have to figure out what's going to go on at running back before we can really figure out receiver. That's at least the way that I work. But at the top, there's two guys that I think are really intriguing. I think Juju against Seattle is a guy that is a good bounce back candidate. Keenan Allen, too. He's another guy to mention. With the injuries going on, he could really benefit from the volume. But Michael Thomas at 8K is a guy that I love. I think he's probably the best guy if you have to pick one receiver at the top. We'll kick it over to you, Brandon. What are you doing at the receiver position this week?
So, I think I'll end up with some of the top price guys, and then a scattering of like low price guys like Cortland Sutton, John Brown, guys that can flash big upside. We might even put Josh Gordon in the category of low to mid price guys that could pop. Josh Gordon, as a Miami guy, I can tell you, spends a lot of time in Miami, and it is the type of game that he would really like to get up for. And he has that kind of potential, like, of course, Edelman is the workhorse wide receiver, the sort of machine-like kind of efficient, grind out the 20-point victory. He's a guy we could expect to have a big performance. He will be very popular. I love Gordon for tournaments as the much less owned guy that could really pop. I think Tyrell will be extremely popular. Juju, Beasley on our non-John Brown lineups. Hopkins, how can you not love a guy that body slams the opposition and then trash talks the NFL for not allowing such things? Cortland Sutton, Amari Cooper, as we mentioned earlier, Christian Kirk. Keenan Allen was a bit of a target monster for week one, didn't have the performance, but we might expect that he could get there this week. That's about where I am.
Yeah, some other guys, I mean, you can throw some darts at those Rams, all those Rams receivers. They obviously have that tournament upside, and, they kind of going to spread some ownership thin between them all because everyone takes different shots. Another guy in the mid-tier, Allen Robinson. I mean, we saw him really look really, really good last week, and with Mitch Trubisky targeting him a ton. So I think he's someone that's certainly in play. Stewart, talk to me about the receiver position. How are you handling it this week?
Yeah, I mean, totally with you guys on Juju. I mean, I think his price is quite low for where we can expect him. Pittsburgh tends to be a pretty pass-heavy offense with Randy Fitchner. So, yeah, love Juju. Also love D-Hop. I mean, the guy has just I mean, there are a few receivers as consistent as he is, and just in terms of just like owning his offense's volume. I mean, just like he's so prolific in the red zone, so prolific really at all points in the field. Like I do like DeAndre Hopkins a good deal. And I mean, I'd go so far on Josh Gordon to say that he's like a viable cash play. I don't know. Julian Edelman at 6'9" feels like a lot. And, Gordon is just such a downfield threat. I have a hard time believing that New England is not going to be able to get loose for a couple big plays. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Gordon ends up in my cash lineup at all. I think he's due for a really big week, especially and with New England. I want to see what happens with Antonio Brown. I am assuming he's not going to play. I don't know. I haven't seen like a ton of news on what the expectation is, but I just can't see how they get Antonio Brown out there in a significant role. And if not, I mean, Gordon's the one guy on New England that can really take the top off the defense. So I love Gordon. Tyrell Williams, totally agree. I mean, the price is very good on Tyrell. I mean, the question I have, like, we've talked about Jacobs, we're talking about Tyrell, and I imagine we'll get to Darren Waller at tight end. Like, how many Oakland Raiders is too many Oakland Raiders? I mean, they looked good on Monday. But I don't know. I just like, to me, that does feel like a ceiling performance for just like that offense as a whole. And I don't know. I just can't justify playing, I certainly can't justify playing 3 Raiders and have a hard time even justifying playing 2 Raiders.
No, that's a good point, Stewart. I will say, like, I think I saw this stat. Someone posted it on Twitter, and I wish I could quote who it was. One of the guys that does a lot of football stuff, maybe a Pro Football Focus guy or something, but it was like Derek Carr was the QB2 and the QB4 last year, I think, against Kansas City. So, like, and if they're going to be trailing, they're going to be passing a ton. Like, Waller is certainly in play. We can just segue to tight end because there's a lot going on at tight end. Like, of course, Kittle against the Raiders. Who doesn't want that? I mean, or not Kittle against the Raiders. Kelsey against the Raiders. Who doesn't want that? Especially with no Tyreek Hill, there's more volume, more opportunity. He's a great spend-up option. Kittle, he's an interesting guy against Cincinnati. But if you look, Evan Ingram in that game environment and with the volume he could be seeing with Shepard dealing with an injury, that's intriguing. I even know Hunter Henry's got an injury, so there's some cheap guys. Mark Andrew had a really good week. Are you buying that? There's one other guy. Waller was one I was thinking of, and there's one more I'm blanking on. Oh, it's Hawkinson, right? So many air yards, and you expect him to possibly be trailing against the Chargers. You know, is that a mirage? Is that reality? We'll kick it off with you, Brandon. How are you handling the tight ends?
So with Waller, I think he will be extremely popular. It is notable that in terms of the team projected points per team fantasy dollars, Oakland is going to rate very high this week. You essentially have 5 guys that are likely to score all the points in Jacobs, Carr, Williams, Waller, and Richard. And with you could do reasonable lineups by just saying, all right, Jacobs and no Carr or Waller, Williams, Carr, some Carr with Williams, and some Carr with Williams and Waller. I think it's a pretty nice team to focus on for tournaments. Other than Waller, it kind of feels like a pay down at tight end week because the chalk is pretty strong. So I think you could sprinkle in some Hawkinson. You could sprinkle a lot of Waller, and then kind of have some pay up lineups with. I'll probably be like 70-75% pay down and 25% pay up for Kelsey, Kittle, Ingram.
Alrighty, Stewart, talk to me. We're running low on time, but I want you to do something for the people. Brandon last week talked about your site, Advanced Sports Analytics. I want you to give kind of a quick breakdown to people, what they can see with it, then give your tight end breakdown, and then I'll talk about stacks for everyone. We'll go through our stacks, and we'll get up out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal with ASA is just to make data accessible to our users. There's a lot of good data out there that I think just requires like a lot of data cleaning and work to really aggregate in a usable way. And I think we work really hard to take like immense amounts of raw data. And I mean, not even like the full universe of data that's out there, but what we have access to, and tried to put it together in usable tools with an interface so that people can easily and quickly. I mean, I think when you're dealing with like injuries on Sundays, like being able to pivot quickly is so important. So trying to aggregate that data in a usable way so that people, can get the information that they need. If you have a question about like what data point do we want to see, and how do we want to respond to that, giving people access like to those data points through our tools. So I think that's our primary focus. Tight end, lastly, I mean, I think I'm kind of in line with Brandon. See myself paying up a little bit for Kelsey and Kittle, but for the most part, going Ingram and down. Waller I like a lot. I mean, I'm not super high on the Oakland stack. Just as a whole, like their team point probability to be the top on the slate, we really got to come down here. I mean, they're a 2 to 3% probability of topping the slate. I just don't see how that can support 3 guys or even 2, and just Waller being the cheapest among Jacobs and Tyrell, to me makes the most sense. And also, like, to me seems least dependent on positive game script. So I like Waller a lot. Delaney Walker's another guy I'll throw out there. Tennessee, kind of sneaky high point total, and our projections for them, really going off is higher than I think I would have expected. Delaney, is a guy that could garner a lot of targets in the red zone, if Tennessee finds themselves there a lot. So that's a play I'm kind of interested in tournaments, but probably a lot of Ingram and Waller for me this week, tight end.
All right, let's end it off with stacks. Brandon, give me your favorite stack, favorite contrarian one, right? Don't mention the Rams. We know that game is a great one. So that's the one we'll keep off the board, but give me one stack that you really like this week.
Well, I think it will be contrarian enough to play Buffalo, and I think that will be likely my biggest tournament stack.
All right, Stu, how about you? Brandon took the easy one. What's yours? I have one that's off the board, so I feel comfortable and no one's taking mine.
Yeah. Oh man, I do like Buffalo and New York with the possibility of running back Ingram. I like a lot. I mean, the quarterback is not contrarian, but I don't see why we can't have another big Ingram Jackson kind of run heavy stack against Arizona. Like, I don't know. I want to go Buffalo, New York, but that's kind of off the board. So I'd be interested in kind of an Ingram Jackson unconventional running back quarterback stack. Maybe that's crazy though. I don't know, but that's my pick.
All right, and mine is totally off the board, and it's got a higher total than both your guys' games. It's Seattle, and it's the Steelers. And the thing I like about it, Russell Wilson, Carson, and you can go with like a Lockett or a Metcalf, just so much condensed targets there, right? And then you can run it back with Juju, who we know is going to get loaded up with targets. So that is my contrarian stack. We got to get up out of here, guys, though. Thanks a lot for joining us. We will be back next week for this show. Excited to be doing this show with you guys, with Stewart and Brandon. For me, Travis Mangone, for Stewart, Brandon Adams, we are out of here.